Kat. Hello, Kat.
Hi, how are you?
Excellent. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you.
Well, how could we help you today?
Well, I have been listening to your program for quite a few years, and one thing that I've never heard you address is, or very often, is the gift of singleness.
Yes.
And you had touched on it briefly last week, and I was so glad to hear you say something about it. And I just wanted some more thoughts.
Okay. Well, it is a gift that people are called to in a special way, and I've had the good fortune of working with some people that there's no question in my mind that because they wanted to and could focus more on ministering in the unique ministries they were in, they stayed single. They were called to singlehood. I know two guys, and I know several women that is the case. And, you know, the Bible tells us that you don't have all these other things to take care of and focus on, so you can give yourself more to ministering for Christ. It is a great honor. And for people to go to church and feel that you've got to be married to be part of the in crowd is a very sad thing. All of us have been single, and many people yearn not to be, and they're yearning inappropriately because they're missing a calling. Some are called to remain single. Henry, you were looking up a little scripture there.
Well, Paul talks about this in, where is this? 1 Corinthians 7. And what he says is really fascinating. And I think it helps people determine sometimes, you know, about this whole issue, because I think it does get confusing. He says that I wish all of you were like I am. You know, in the context, he's talking about marriage.
Yeah.
And he said, but each one has a different gift, right? We all have different gifts. And he kind of joins this idea that Paul thought it was the best present that God had ever given him, or one of the best presents, that he was single, because he could go pursue all that he wanted to do for God and this, that, and the other, and didn't have all the other responsibilities. But then he says that not everybody has that gift. And here's one of the things that I try to help people work through. That generally speaking, if you have a gift from God, you're going to perceive that as something good.
Yeah.
And something that you know, our various gifts, we tend to operate in those gifts, right? For the most part, unless there's some kind of damage or something. And that's a natural kind of inclination that you perceive as good. There are a lot of people, though, Steve, I think, that are longing to have a spouse and longing to have a family and this, that, and the other. And that longing has turned into despair. And if they have that, I don't think you can just assume that, you know, they should be grateful for the gift of celibacy or the gift of singleness. Right. What instead, if that is a real longing or a desire, what instead I think that people have to do is they have to take ownership of that longing. And they have to begin to stop kind of being mad at God for not bringing that and ask, okay, what am I going to do with that desire? And sometimes that desire is misplaced. Sometimes they are actually needing marriage so desperately because they really never have had a family, even growing up, and they feel unloved. In fact, Solomon says in Proverbs that it's really a scary, really frightening thing when an unloved woman finds a husband.
Yeah.
For example, if somebody is unloved in life and they're going to try to turn a marriage into making up for all that they don't have, then that's going to be a rocky marriage.
Yeah.
So I think that they've got to figure that out. Then get healed in those areas and get to be a happy single person, and then you'll make much happier marriage choices as well. But it is a gift, Paul says. And there are a lot of people that embrace it. But if you have a gift, you're not going to be resentful of a gift. So that's one of the things you have to diagnose.
Well, let me ask you this, though. I mean, because as a single person, or I guess I was single again, so maybe I'm not even in that category, but I had to...
Single, right?
Single is single. I had to really... There was a lot of grief work involved as every year went by and I didn't have a life partner. It would have been so easy for me to do exactly what you said, Henry, is to go into despair. And I actually had some very good friends of mine they're still friends saying, well, maybe God has called you to be single because you can minister more from this place. You don't have the distractions of little ones or a husband. And I hated to hear that. Every time I heard that, I could feel the hair on my back rise up. Yeah. But what I did is, instead of just letting that take me out, I said, Lord, okay, I am not in relationship, and what can I do to make my life full? So, Kat, even hearing from you, I can hear joy in your voice. I just had dinner with a gentleman friend of mine that we've been friends for 25 years, and he's never been married, and he's in his mid-50s, and he's a traveling evangelist. And we were just talking last night. He's like, it feels so good to be with a single woman that I can have a great conversation with. And we just kind of filled each other up last night. And because we're both living full lives. And so in the midst of women like Kat or other singles, if you are single and you're in that gifted place of moving through that and living a full life, we need to stay connected and getting loved on, so that we don't feel alone. Paul had a full life, but he was connected too, right?
Right. That was my first point.
Yeah.
That if somebody's empty and thinking that marriage is going to solve that, it's not. You're going to have an empty marriage.
Right.
Because you're going to find somebody who's detached, or you're going to find somebody who's connectable and unable to connect with them like you're unable to connect with other people. And I'm seriously, I'm not trying to be harsh here. I'm telling you, if you're single, the best advice I can give you is to have a healthy, fulfilled life of community, because even if you don't have, quote, the gift, you will make better marriage choices out of a full life than not. And then if you, but you started off, Sherry, with a but let me ask you this.
Well, because there was grief. I mean, I had to go through some I didn't know whether it was a gift or not. I mean, I was hoping to get married sooner, but I was grieving.
What's the question, though, in that? You said, but let me ask you this.
Well, do you think that grief could be a part in the gift? Okay, a celibacy, if God has called you that, do you think there might be some stages of grief as you grieve, as I grieved having a child in my younger years? I still haven't had a little one. That's a reality for me.
I would push back a little bit on what your friend said.
Okay.
And not call it a gift. When your friend said, if you're grieving all this stuff and it's painful, this and that, that is what it is, right?
Right.
And when your friend says, well, maybe God has called you to be single, I would rephrase that sentence to this. I don't know what God's called you to do, but right now we know that God has you in a place in your life where you're single. So like I said earlier, what are you going to do with the ownership of where you are today, instead of turning that into some sort of life plan?
Exactly.
And then you go through all this machinations in your head.
And resentment towards God, right?
That's
because
my point. And if you're resenting God for a gift, I'm not quite sure that's a gift. Paul did not sound resentful, like he had to go through a grief process there. Yeah. But if you find yourself single or you find yourself married, what he said is, be all that you're supposed to be right where you are.
And be sure that when you're married, you don't all of a sudden feel God's call to be single. That's not what we're talking about here. That's not a good excuse to get out of that marriage, all right? Well, there you are. I hope that's a blessing to you.
I wrote a book called How to Get a Date Worth Keeping.
We're going to send
it's not like I'm telling single people, be happy with what you got. Right. I think that marriage is a good thing, and that a lot of times people who don't have the relationship they want and they're waiting on God, they really could have that relationship if they did some certain things.
And let me just say this about you, Sherry. You really kind of had a mindset that you weren't in the dating world.
Right.
You had kind of shut that down in your life, and I think Henry kind of revived that that piece.
He did, Henry. I'm so grateful for you.
I did?
Yeah, of course you did. Like a year and a half ago, you kind of got me back out there again.
I remember I was talking about your dating. I didn't know I revived.
Oh, Henry, you just have to talk to all my friends. I'm like, Henry kind of kicked me in the butt and got me back out there, because hope deferred makes the heart sick, and I'd lost hope.
Oh, so you were bummed.
And I unplugged. Yeah, I unplugged. I was sad and grieving, and like, I don't even want to go out there and try anymore, but you got me back on track. And
I just bring that up to say that, some people that maybe are frustrated and angry at where they are in their life, maybe they need to get back in gear and get on a dating site, get your book, How to Get a Date Worth Keeping, and they may find themselves in a different place.